local school districts what the Commonwealth Court judge said you must do. Now, folks in Washington, in the federal administration, they can ignore judges' decisions. They have this tendency to want to attack judges if those judges rule that the work that they're doing is unconstitutional, illegal, wrong. But we don't do that here in Pennsylvania. At least I hope we don't do that here in Pennsylvania. I hope we have not sunk into that depth. The Commonwealth Court judge said very clearly in an 800-page decision that the way Pennsylvania funds its education system to 70% of the students in Pennsylvania, the way Pennsylvania funds its education system is inadequate, inequitable, and unconstitutional. This budget proposal in front of us right now ignores the judge's decision. The president judge's decision of Commonwealth Court. That's who wrote it in an 800-page decision. Now, I didn't go to law school, but all my lawyer friends tell me that if a judge writes a decision with that kind of depth, that kind of clarity, that intensity, after years and years of work and years of research and everything that goes along with it, that it means something. But what this bill does is it ignores that responsibility. So that means that local school districts will wind up having to confront higher property taxes. It decimates human service programs. It generates higher costs for Pennsylvania's families. You know, Mr. President, I thank the members for their attention to this matter, to coin a phrase. But unfortunately, their attention to this matter does not provide the reality and the meaningfulness that the matter deserves. In addition to ignoring the judge's responsibility, the judge's mandate, a mandate that the opponents to the judge's decision chose not even to appeal to the state Supreme Court, which means that they agreed with it. They chose not to appeal it to the state Supreme Court. That means that they agreed with the decision. Ignoring the responsibility of the citizens of Pennsylvania, ignoring the judge's decision, and very easily forgetting about another reality that exists in Pennsylvania. We have a $3 billion operational surplus. We sit on $7 billion in the state's rainy day fund. If the crisis that exists so much in Pennsylvania, we need to make sure that we're utilizing those available dollars to deal with the interests and the needs of the people of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, not, as this budget will do, force increases in local property taxes to address the deficiencies that will come with this budget as it relates to education funding, as it relates to health and human service funding. That's the reality that exists in this budget, in what's in front of us right now. Now, hopefully, as I said in the Appropriations Committee, when we had our vote there, hopefully this leads us to a moment where we can step up the budget negotiations, step up the conversations, and hopefully, within a week to 2 weeks, prayerfully before Labor Day, we do the work that should have been done on June 30th. It should have been done on June 30th when we're required to get the state budget done. Hopefully, this moment leads to us finishing the work, but I can assure you that this bill in front of us right now is woefully deficient to the needs of the people of Pennsylvania and certainly does not meet the mandate of Commonwealth Court's decision around education funding. Thank you, Mr. President.
Chair, thanks, gentlemen. Chair recognizes Senator Pittman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, the one thing the good gentleman and I have in common is that we're not lawyers. Now, I'm just a country boy who grew up on one of those rural roads that we talked about earlier in this debate. But the one thing I think we have to remember about the Commonwealth Court ruling is that it was 760 pages that basically concluded that it's up to the governor and the General Assembly how to figure out the best way to fund education. Now, if you look at the budget that we're passing and how that will drive dollars out to our school districts, before we are so critical of this budget, we should probably look at the governor's proposed budget. Now, the governor's proposed budget is not all that in a bag of apples. I realize the saying used to be it's not all that in a bag of chips, but now that we're making America healthy again, I figure we'll use apples. But it's not all that in a bag of apples, because you see, under the governor's proposed budget, 92 school districts out of the 500 get less money in real dollars than they do under the budget that we passed last year. I'm not talking about a decreased appropriation in terms of a inflationary index. I'm talking about losing real dollars. And guess which district of the 92 loses the most? The city of Pittsburgh. So if I represent the city of Pittsburgh, I'm probably not real enamored with the governor's budget, because under that proposal, that district gets less money this year than it did the year prior. Now, thankfully, our friends in the House couldn't even lift the governor's budget, so that is now a moot point. So here we are, as the gentleman from Lancaster pointed out, the House has passed a $50.6 billion budget. We are about to pass a $47.7 billion budget. But in the eyes of the Commonwealth Court, I would surmise that at least for those 92 districts, our budget's treating them much better than the governor's proposed budget. So this process will move along. We will continue to have our healthy debate, but let's be very clear about some of the realities of budgeting. Let's be clear about some of the realities of formulas and what formulas mean whenever we talk about that Commonwealth Court ruling, because as I said, the governor's budget, 348 school districts of the 500 get 97% of the governor's proposed increase. The other 152 school districts get 3%. 92 of them get less money in real dollars. I'm not sure, and again, I'm not a lawyer. I'm just a country boy. But I'm not sure the Commonwealth Court had that in mind whenever that ruling was issued, and I quite frankly would surmise that that's probably why the Commonwealth Court said after 768 pages that it's basically up to the governor and the General Assembly to figure it out. Well, thank you very much. But my guess is some of the plaintiffs in that ruling have some buyer's remorse, because after that opinion was issued, it didn't turn out to be all that in a bag of apples. I encourage an affirmative vote for the product in front of us.
Chair recognizes Senator Costa on the bill.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I wasn't intending to speak on final passage here, but given that a couple things have been invoked with respect to myself. One, I am a lawyer, and I do respect what our courts have rulings of our courts, particularly in this particular case, the precedent-setting case that it put forth and how it has addressed some of the most problematic funding formulas we had in the past, which was deemed to be unconstitutional, and we went through steps to be able to fix it. And I'm proud of the work that has been done over the years along those lines, and I stand by what is being done to create equitable and adequate fair funding across this Commonwealth. I also stand here as a representative of the city of Pittsburgh and working closely with our school district. And I'm comfortable working closely with my colleagues, both on the House Democratic side and the governor's office, to make certain that we advance and advocate for the resources for that city of Pittsburgh, since they were mentioned. But at the end of the day, we are a Commonwealth, and it's our obligation to make certain that we provide resources to all our school districts in a fair and equitable way. And that's what that court decision said, and that's what the Funding Education Committee came out with when they made their ruling. I know you all didn't agree with the formula and all those things that took place with that, but it passed, and it passed with the different chambers supporting it along with the governor's office. At the end of the day, we have an obligation to educate our kids, as was indicated. But let's talk about some of the other things that we haven't talked a little bit about that we've been trying to do to be able to help our school districts, in particular the city of Pittsburgh. We've been talking about advocating, and we've been advocating for charter school reforms for quite a long time. There's one thing right there that would be very beneficial along those lines, particularly as it relates to cyber charter schools, for example. These are some of the things that we're going to continue to advocate to bring special relief to cities like the city of Pittsburgh with regard to what's being done. What's most frustrating to us here is that now we are 7 weeks removed from June 30th. More importantly, we are 5 weeks or so, several more than 5 weeks removed from when the governor's budget that passed, the governor's agreed to budget at that point in time, and working with Democrats and the governor's office, presented a $50.6 billion budget that the House passed. And it came over here and immediately was stripped out with no alternative plan in place. No plan to be able to recommend what we should do with respect to spending. Now we find ourselves here on August 12th trying to put together, shoehorn a budget through this General Assembly. That's not going to happen, by the way. We know where our House Democrats stand. We know where our governor stands. This is just an exercise in futility. And we don't understand why it took us this many weeks to be able to get to this point in time. At the end of the day, it doesn't address funding for education. It doesn't address funding for human service programming. And some of the folks who talked a little bit about those providers that aren't getting their money, guess what? They're not going to be able to handle what's coming to them as we deal with some of the things that Senator Hughes talked about as it relates to the programming that's being cut across this country and across this Commonwealth with respect to the federal activities. We had a job to do. We should have done it many, many weeks ago, but we weren't able to do that. It's now incumbent upon us to reject what we have in front of us and get back to the table and put together a strong negotiating team that's going to allow us the opportunity to find that common ground, to find the sweet spot between the 50.6 that was referenced and some number between 47 or 48. Let's get together and resolve it that way, and let's do the things we are supposed to do here in Pennsylvania. My colleague talked about increases in property taxes. That's going to happen in your school districts, because they all were banking on receiving additional money, at least some portion of the basic education amount. This was the $75 million. Or they were banking on receiving part of the $526, or some of the $40 million the governor proposed for special education. Now they're going to have to all go back and redo their budgets if this measure would pass. It's wrong. It's unconscionable that we're even in this position right now. We need to get serious about what we're trying to do here. We're going to try to pass a bogus transit bill that's going to take money from capital projects across this Commonwealth with respect to transit. Now we're going to tell people think that they're going to pass a general fund budget that's going to solve their problems. It's not going to solve their problems. It's not going to do anything to help our municipalities and our school districts and our counties that are struggling to be able to make ends meet. We have an obligation to make certain we make investments in this Commonwealth, particularly as Senator Hughes talked about when we sit on $3 billion. We all talk about sitting on money. You all been talking about sitting on money in these various pots and all these various funds. We've been sitting on $3 billion in Pennsylvania and $7 billion in a rainy day fund. At what point are we going to be able to look to those resources and say it's appropriate for us to utilize a portion of those resources as the governor recommended? We think the time is now to be able to use those resources to put into good use in Pennsylvania and help us grow our economy and protect our residents of this Commonwealth. I ask for a negative vote on this measure, Mr. President. Thank you.
The clerk will call the roll.
Bargle. Aye. Baker. Aye. Bartolotta. Aye. Pascola. No. Brooks. Aye. Brown. Aye. Capoletti. No. Coleman. Collette. No. Comita. No. Costa. No. Culver. Aye. Dush. Aye. Ferry. Aye. Flynn. No. Fontana. No. Gephardt. Aye. Haywood. No. Hughes. No. Hutchinson. Aye. Carney. Carney. No. Kiefer. Aye. Kim. No. Langerholtz. Aye. Laughlin. Aye. Malone. No. Martin. Aye. Mastriano. Aye. Miller. No. Muth. No. Pennycook. Aye. Phillips Hill. Aye. Picozzi. Aye. Piscatano. No. Pittman. Aye. Robinson. Aye. Rothman. Aye. Santicero. No. Saval. No. Schwenk. No. Stefano. Aye. Street. Tartaglione. No. Vogel. Aye. Ward Judy. Aye. Ward Kim. Aye. Williams Anthony H. No. Williams Lindsay. No. Yaw. Aye. Coleman. Aye. Street. Street, no.
The vote on the final passage is the ayes are 27, the nays are 22. This bill has been passed by the Senate and will be sent to the House of Representatives for its concurrence. This concludes supplemental calendar number 1. Chair recognizes Senator Pittman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I call up supplemental calendar number 2, notwithstanding the provisions of Rule 12. I move the Senate proceed to consider House Bill 257 on supplemental calendar number 2.
Senator Pittman, without objection, calls up supplemental calendar number 2 and moves that, notwithstanding the provisions
President, will you just for a moment?
Senate will briefly be at ease. Returning to session, Senator Pittman, without objection, calls up supplemental calendar number 2 and moves that, notwithstanding the provisions of Senate Rule 12, the Senate proceed to consider House Bill 257 contained on supplemental calendar 2. On the motion, the clerk will call the roll.
Argel. Aye. Baker. Aye. Bartolotta. Aye. Boscola. No. Brooks. Aye. Brown. Aye. Capoletti. No. Coleman. Aye. Collette. No. Comita. No. Costa. No. Culver. Aye. Dush. Aye. Ferry. Aye. Flynn. No. Fontana. No. Gephardt. Aye. Haywood. No. Hughes. No. Hutchinson. Aye. Carney. No. Kiefer. Aye. Kim. No. Langerholtz. Aye. Laughlin. Aye. Malone. Malone. No. Martin. Aye. Mastriano. Aye. Miller. No. Muth. No. Pennycook. Aye. Phillips Hill. Aye. Picozzi. Aye. Piscatano. No. Pittman. Aye. Robinson. Aye. Rothman. Aye. Santicero. No. Saval. No. Schwenk. No. Stefano. Aye. Street. No. Tartaglione. No. Vogel. Aye. Ward Judy. Aye. Ward Kim. Aye. Williams Anthony H. No. Williams Lindsay. No. Y'all. Aye.
On the vote, the ayes are 27, the nays are 22. The motion carries. We'll now proceed to the consideration of supplemental calendar number 2. First bill on the calendar is House Bill 257. This bill has been considered on 3 different days in open Senate and is now before the Senate for final passage. The question is, will the Senate finally pass this bill? Chair recognizes Senator Baker.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to acknowledge the persistence and diligence of Majority Leader Joe Pittman, Chair of Transportation Judy Ward, their staffs for forging the package presented for us today. At least under standard definitions of negotiating, one must give something to obtain something.